welcome back. We have another great lecture today. We had a great guest in to give the whole lab a nice chat about some attachments and bars. And my guest today who came in and spoke was Elvis Dahl, who is from Preat and also host of the Voices from the Bench podcast, which we'll get into in a little bit. But thank you for coming, Elvis.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
Yep.
You guys have a great facility here.
Yeah, absolutely. The lectures and having someone come in as a guest is always fun and it's different for everybody. They're used to the same people. Like, I don't want to talk every time. I'm happy you came in and did that. And,
absolutely.
And BJ's thankful for it too. So
absolutely.
So, you know, with regards to Preat, what are some things that you think that maybe doctors don't know about Preat, or some of the things the lab doesn't even know? I mean, we know all the products you sell, but what are some things maybe the doctors don't know that Preat can actually provide and do better?
Absolutely. So Preat has been around for over 41 years. And for the longest time, we were known as the attachment company. So you're talking distal attachments and things that held partials in. And since the standard of care has become implants, the attachments have kind of gone away. But Preat didn't sit back. We continue to grow with the industry. So now we have stud attachments, bars, and even fixed solutions for tie bases and stock abutments and verification cylinders. So there's a lot of options out there.
Right.
And that's what I like people to know about Preat is one-stop shop. You can get it all.
Yeah, and I think you know, you've been in the lab business a long time, I have, and I think a lot of the times when I talk to a doctor on the phone, they won't even know 2/3 of the attachments that are actually out there and available for them. They'll continue to use like an O-ring, which sucks. And,
yeah.
You know, and they don't know about these great attachments like the snaps and all these, what was the other one, the VS system.
Oh, the Sagics. Yeah.
So there's so many great attachments out there, and they all have their great purposes out there, but like getting these doctors to really understand that and to trust us and saying, no, don't go with that.
Yeah.
Let's go with this one is kind of big. You know, I think, God, we got to let them know.
So I think the biggest position a lab can put themselves in is becoming an expert on these type of cases. When a case comes into the lab, it is not a locator case 100% of the time.
Right.
And people, usually that's what they think, that's what they know. It's the Kleenex of our industry. That's what people know. And if a case comes in and it's not a good locator case, a lab can position themselves to the point where they can benefit their clients and their doctors by saying, here's better options.
Yep.
And it comes down to different choices.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. I think it's really important. That's a great point. Yep. You've been a lab guy your whole life. You know the lab business. I do. What are some things that you've seen over time, like that technicians have tried to process attachments, make bars, fit? You showed us an example of a housing that was crooked. You know, I'm sure you've seen it all. Give us an example of some of the weirdest, craziest things you've seen. Anything interesting?
Yeah, so when it comes to like hater bars, like I mentioned in the presentation, we're seeing a resurgence of hater bars. I think it comes from the fact that a lot of patients that are put into fixed are finding out they're not really a candidate for that. So they're going to a more removable. And hater is a perfect example of labs not processing it right. Yeah. And those nylons, or what's called a rider, will curl in and almost become useless because it's not processed correctly using the correct pieces like the processing clip.
Even the metal, right? I've done hundreds of these, and
Yep.
I know, like polishing that gold or silver. I mean, if you take a rubber wheel to that or polish that important part of that bar too much or do it wrong,
you lose it.
Yeah. It's gone. Yeah.
Luckily, CAD-CAM has changed a lot of that. So when you get a CAD-CAM fabricated bar, there's not much polishing you need to do. Those things are beautiful and precise. Yeah. But if it's not processed right, you can ruin the whole thing.
Right. Now, I really want to get into this. I've been waiting to ask you about the podcast.
Yes.
The awesome podcast. It's great.
Yes.
And for those of you that don't know, Elvis is the host or the co-host of a fantastic dental lab podcast. It's called Voices from the Bench. I listen to it when I can. It's on my Apple downloads subscription, and it's a great podcast, and you give great information on it. I mean, what did you say? You had 193 episodes?
Yep, 193. We do it every Monday morning. We have a new episode come out. We just feature anybody and everybody in our industry. So I've always been a fan of going to conventions, going to shows, dental shows, Visions 21, going to Chicago, doing all that. But what I really enjoyed was the time spent in the hall or in the exhibit hall talking to people casually. And I thought, why not bring that to everybody?
Do you get recognized now because of it? Or?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I'll go into labs and people will be like, your voice is familiar, which is weird. And then you're like, yeah, and then you find out, and then you find out that they listen.
Well, I mean, the podcast comes naturally to you because you have experience in the lab. So when you know the material, it just comes naturally to you.
I've always...
And is your co-host also, what's her name again?
Barbara Wojin,
Okay.
she's been in a lab her whole life. Her dad was a technician. She was raised in a lab. I didn't get into it until my early 30s.
Okay.
Didn't even know what it was.
Cool.
So I brought her in and we've teamed up. She has that lifelong experience. She's actually a ceramist on a bench. I don't have that experience.
Right.
So it's nice that we were able to pull that together.
Love it. There's people out here listening to it. So
Yeah.
we thank you for doing it.
It's the easiest thing I've ever done. Why? Because our industry is so great and people are willing to share.
Yes.
So many labs are willing just to share
Yep.
information. Even though we're competitors, we're not. We're all trying to strengthen our industry, and that's what it's all about.
And by the way, BJ did your podcast.
Yeah, he was on.
So go out there and find the episode with BJ. It was really interesting.
Yeah, he was a
good.
great guest.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming in.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Thank
and
you,
it was
Sam.
nice to meet
Appreciate
you
it.
today. Thank you.
Thanks.
To receive a copy of this lecture, visit www.rodentallab.com/ROE Reviews.